have to think about AI as another actor in a process. It's not just input output, in terms of a UI and or a system. You now have this other thing that is person-like in a way, who might asking you more questions, might be requiring more input, might be having, in a sense, a conversation in a way to ultimately lead to some outcome, which is very, very different than the products we have been working with for the last 20 years. I tend to feel that like 5 years from now, it's going to be very, very different. The patterns of use, the things that people were used to, are just going to change. And designers need to be ready to evolve with that. And so I think right now is the time designers everywhere need to be learning about AI. Not using it generatively, but understand it. Think about what is it doing within in a sense, a transactional process of a user interacting with a product.
Hello everyone, I'm Yuri, CEO of Siden, a digital product design agency. Welcome back to Siden Podcast, where we dive deep with discussion with bright people on intersection of product strategy and design strategy. Today we are excited to welcome Larry Pelty, Director of Product Design at Clari. Larry has 20 years of experience in product design and many years of experience in design management, mentorship. Now he is delving deep into AI and user experience that intersects with AI. Hi, Larry. Thank you for joining us today. We are excited to delve deep into your vision for the future of product design and AI.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here. I love always the opportunities to have these kind of conversations. So definitely looking forward for them to the next hour or so.
We would like to start from a few rapid questions, just to help our audience learn more about you, understand your vision. Maybe you can share what book influenced you and your product or business vision the most.
I would have to say "Don't Make Me Think" by Steve Krug. So it's a very old book, came out I think in 2000. And it was probably the very, very early 2000s. And so at the time I was a graphic designer, just beginning to explore this whole thing, human-computer interaction, and it really got me thinking and focused in that area. And here we are, many years later, and it's a classic book. I think everyone needs to read it.
What product gave you the best experience ever?
Ooh, this is probably going to be divisive. I would actually say the very original iPhone, only because I remember to this day, it's like how amazing it felt to like just experience something so dramatic and different than phones were at the time. Now we can look at back now and say that the experience is not so great, but especially skeuomorphism. Yes, in the United States more. But at that moment, it was so delightful.
Do you have a favorite quote?
Oh, yes. The best icon is a text label. I think this was attributed to Bruce Tognazini, if I'm saying that correctly, who was a founding partner of the Nielsen Norman Group. I use that a lot, because icons, we think about these icon libraries of thousands of icons that are almost meaningless to people, and so people don't understand them. But and I like to reiterate that, especially in the complex enterprise software environment that I work in.
If you could switch roles with anyone in your company for a day, who would be it and why?
To say maybe our chief product officer. Just seeing how he works and just this incredible vision he brings to the product organization, the kinds of challenges, thinking just huge big picture across the four product areas that Clari has. I think it would be an amazing opportunity to, I imagine, a very challenging one.
If you could have a dinner party with influential person from design community or design world, who would be it and why?
Steve Jobs. So while he was not a designer per se, I think he had this amazing vision, and he built all these ideas off the ideas of others. And he had, I think, this incredible skill to just take an idea that was maybe okay and make it something amazing, forward thinking. And I remember even after he passed away, hearing that it's like he had years of ideas already in the pipeline, that persisted well after he was gone. And I think it would just be truly amazing to see, like, to talk to him, see how did he connect all of these different things together.
Hmm? What's the most valuable lessons you learned during your career?
Every problem can be solved but not necessarily in the way that you think or by you alone. And so I think that really leads into understanding the people you work with, that and bringing them in, knowing that you may not be able to solve it yourself, and maybe you can't solve it yourself at all, but by facilitating others to come and help, I think anything can be solved.
It triggers another quote for me. Not every problem should be solved immediately.
It's a good one.
So maybe you can tell us a few words about Clari. What is it, and how it's different from other sales software?
Sure, sure. So Clari as a whole is really focused on revenue governance and management, as well as sales productivity, and all the pieces that kind of relate to that. So you could really think of that as within a sales process. Clari provides all of the products from the top of the funnel all the way through closing the deal and implementation. And so specifically in the area that I work, so I'm director over two different product areas that deal with sales engagement, which also includes a lot of our AI types, our generative AI types of functions, and it also mutual action plans, which are kind of another part of the process in which like account executives, for example, interact with buying teams. So it's a very, very tightly coupled kind of set of software. But there's a lot of crossover into other areas, dealing with like forecasting and inspection of accounts and so forth. So it's a very, very broad and very complex platform.
Mm-hmm. And from your design approach, do you think there is a difference how your team approaches design for sales? Because there are so many different tools there,
There
but
are. It is a very tight market, and certainly what's happening within this market is a lot of consolidation. We think about organizations maybe years ago. There were many, many different types of tools, and people were okay. Companies were okay with like, I'll have a tool for this and a tool for that and a tool for this. But the everything has shifted toward this consolidation, and so we think about the need for a platform to really be all inclusive. And so we're facing those same challenges as our competitors, and to say how we're approaching things differently. I think we're all, I don't know that in a way we're finding maybe our own ways to solve these kinds of problems, to think about this consolidation in the market of these types of technologies in our own unique ways. And so, but every design team in the space that I am in is facing this same challenge. Every single design team through all of our competitors should be seeing what I see, what we all see within the product team, is that this consolidation is real, and we have to continue the innovation and evolution of these products.
And why do you think it happens?
It's definitely tied, I feel like, to what happened with COVID. So we see this almost expansion in the market of like this, hey, there's money everywhere, we're making money, let's hire more salespeople, hey, we need more licenses for these technologies. But then as we all saw this market shift in the last year or so, and then even more so this year, this shift in continued sort of contraction of personnel, not because necessarily there's a financial need, but more because it's sort of this desire for more efficiency. Think about like Google, for example, laying off people, not because they needed to, but because they wanted to get back to this maybe more efficient startup mindset. And so when this is happening, I think that's affecting, obviously the number of salespeople who might be in the number of licenses. And I think with all this, the companies are looking for efficiency, as they're trying to cut costs. Well, does it really make sense if we're paying this money for this one and this one and this one, this tool, just over and over again, versus we could pay a little less and have maybe most of the features altogether is one platform, easier to maintain. Maybe we need less admins to maintain them because it's simpler, less need for integration teams to work on it, so maybe less personnel there. So I think it's definitely related to the market shift we see.
Yeah, how do you approach market exploration, discovery? Because you see that everybody is trying to build something new. To the speed of development is super fast. There are a lot of announcements. What's
Yes.
your process for that?
So we have an amazing product marketing team who is constantly watching the market. They're conveying information to us from analysts, what they see from competitor announcements. We try to do this with internally within the product team, but obviously it's difficult to do that in addition to thinking about our roadmap, our plans to move forward, how we work to execute those plans. So it's a collaborative effort, I think, to your direct question. And it's important that we really consider what's happening in the market, not so much to follow suit. And I think because that's always a danger for product companies if they're always following everyone else and not leading. But it's important to understand that if the market is shifting some way, we need to understand the why behind it. Obviously AI, everyone is in this space is using AI in some way, in some very similar ways. And it's like, which doesn't necessarily mean we need to do it in the same way, but we need to understand what is being done. So that information is really critical, I would say, to the product development process.
So what I see is that there are two trends. One is much stronger, then everything becomes sales platform, when enterprises just want one framework that covers all the workflows of their sales team. And another is innovation in specific areas, when there is one super focused tool, but that does it perfectly, is the best on the market. There are no
Hmm.
competition with the quality of its work or maybe user experience. But at the end, they're still at risk that bigger players will just copy their features and implement the
Yes.
similar
Yes.
functionality. So it's the strategy for them perhaps would be to get acquired or to grow faster to
Mhm.
more powerful tools later.
Absolutely. And I think the way the market is leading, and it's interesting how organizations, even super large enterprise organizations, are willing to take less cumulative capability over to have a more consolidated and easier to roll out, easier to manage platform. And it's interesting because it to your point, those small players who are hyper focused on like one really amazing feature, it puts them at risk because the enterprises, they'll say, well, that may be super amazing, we love that, but we're just going to go ahead and wait with our consolidated platform. They'll eventually get there. And so, yeah, I think it makes it really difficult for those small players now. I think getting acquired is probably maybe one of the best outcomes they can hope for in this consolidating market.
Mm-hmm. And how do you measure the success of your design work? Because what I see, it's also really hard to see. As you mentioned, it's collaborative work. Yeah, so there is a strategy part, there is a design part. Like, how don't you know that design work succeed?
That's a really difficult question, and I talk about this with my team, and we think about how we can measure such things because it's challenging when you think about product organizations that have regular rollouts. They're fixing bugs at the same time of potentially releasing new features. And now, if we're fixing bugs and releasing a new design of one particular feature, how then do we measure, was it the bug fix or was it the new or the updated design that led to maybe an improvement in user satisfaction? I mean, if we of course use NPS, but it's a lagging indicator, right? It's like we generally try to rely on as much qualitative information as possible. So user interviews either through internal users, because our own users are our first line of testing because they use our products. So we can
Mhm.
get, they're not a perfect solution, but it can at least give us a basically a baseline. Like, are we on a right path based on the positive feedback from this feature? And then of course testing it with actual real users. Right now, that is among the best way we can truly understand. Now we also can link it to our data tracking systems, analytics, and think, okay, well, we can potentially correlate that with like, okay, we're seeing an uptick in delight perhaps around some features. Like, are we seeing then those metrics increase, the weekly active users? Do we see a greater degree of adoption now because we've maybe solved some challenge that made it difficult? So it's kind of a multi-tier approach, and we have to really look, I think, between the lines in a way. I don't think we have any one type of data point that really can then say this design was successful or a failure.
Do you think there is a huge role of intuition? You just feel that you're moving in the right direction, or it's always about just trying to have numbers that support your decisions?
Yeah, and I also tend to I think about, so Jared Spool. pretty big name in the space, right? It's like I remember him making a comment, something around that, around sort of like these almost vanity metrics, that he was not super big on these on the idea of metrics for the sake of having metrics. And I think behind that, there's some meaning to that. It like if you can say, well, the success of this mobile app is because the weekly active users increased. But is that really true? I mean, if you think about a specific use case for like maybe it provides an assistant kind of capability for salespeople, would increased usage of that necessarily be a means of knowing that it's more successful? Well, not necessarily, right? Because they're in front of their laptops. When would they use this mobile app? Maybe when they're on site, maybe when they're in the airport and they're traveling to meet a customer, then they would use it. And so what I think about sometimes is that we have to think about ways of measuring critical moments, so, and how would we measure a critical moment? So in that situation, which is not necessarily the frequency of users, the adoption of the tool, but did it solve a problem in a critical moment? Can we measure that? I'm not sure we truly can yet, and I think that's where the qualitative aspect comes in. We have to, interview. We have to then understand and hear. It's like, hey, this mobile app. Oh my God, I don't use it much, but in this one moment, it saved the deal. Yeah, to me, that would be like, wow, that was a success.
Yeah, and also sometimes if you measure just an in-app interaction, you forget that maybe the best way to notify user was email or other
Yeah,
types of communication, or maybe just not distracting people because people hate that they got notifications, they opened the app, and it was nothing useful for them. So
absolutely,
you got more usage, but in case you killed the experience.
absolutely.
There was a time when designers had to sell what they do to others. I
Mm.
just came from the conference on AI from Montreal, and people always ask me, "What do you do, guys?" And I have to tell like what I do 20 times a day, for example. It's very interesting because there are so many ways you can tell what do you do as a designer. Do you have your favorite way to describe the value you and your team provides to the company? Like what's because
Mm.
you can tell about business metrics, you can tell about user engagement. What would be your approach?
That's a good question, and I think back not that many years ago, I had worked for an organization that was of lower UX maturity, and so it was sort of like that. It's like we had these pockets of teams that sort of understood what me and my team did, and then others who like, "Are you a graphic designer?" You know, and having to sort of justify that. So, and even when I think about it, just outside of the field, like explaining to friends, family, friends, what do I do? I tend to think about it very basically. I work to solve problems. I solve problems. I think about because users have needs. They want to accomplish something. They can't. Either the feature doesn't exist or the product doesn't even exist to solve this problem. And so I think about it like I help to solve problems in the form of design and product design. And that's what I do. And then if there's interest, if it sort of piques interest, I then go a little deeper and say like, well, it's like I understand I want to understand the behaviors. There's the cognitive science aspect of it. There's the design aspect. But I think a lot of us probably have had those challenges of trying to explain what we do, especially in those organizations or within even those meetings. Like you could be the sole designer in a group of product managers and engineers who maybe have never really worked in sort of a user-centered design process. The first thought is like, oh, well, you're the graphic designer. You'll make what we decide pretty. I'm like, well, no, that's not what we do. I mean, that's one thing we can do, certainly, but it's we help to solve problems.
That's about strategy, perhaps, yeah, because you're not expecting that somebody will tell you what to do, even like finding the problem, because sometimes people don't know what is their problems, and it can go even over.
Hmm.
Uh, I like this approach. I will borrow it from you from time to time. What is the hardest thing in the job of design manager?
Hardest thing, I would say, really connecting the dots and thinking about an experience from like the larger suite wide perspective. So I think so Clari, there's four distinct product areas. There's different designers in different areas. There's sort of natural silos and that can happen because of that. And it's as a design leader within the organization and in same past organizations as well, it's like you have to be able to understand what is occurring in these different product areas. You have to be able to think about the experience across a suite. You can't just think about, okay, what's the experience in product A and product B, product C? You have to think about it from this holistic perspective. And it gets very difficult because you really have to pay attention. What is it? So even myself, there's the other parts of the design team that are working on things that don't directly relate to my team's products, but I still have to understand them. I still have to know what's going on, and because there's always the potential for to identify some challenge or some connecting moment. I'll give you an example. A few weeks back, I was listening to like a kind of a demo release about some new features in in our conversational intelligence tool, which is a different team. It's located in India, and I realized, wait a second, like they talked about this particular pattern around like mapping fields. Like, well, one of my products has a similar thing, and the design was different. So immediately the first thing that I did is like, okay, we need to surface. I need to surface this. So immediately get the PMs on both sides. I want to make sure that both product areas understand that there is a pattern being used that is being represented differently, which can create confusion. It increases the cognitive load. If a user has both of these products in their suite that they have to do it one way in this product and in a different way in this product, we need to fix that. And so it's a very, very difficult thing. And it's, I think, for any design manager, they have to really hone that skill. And it's really about that active listening, like listen to like demos and product announcements and any kind of internal happening that's going on about the products and understand it very, very deeply. And you'll be able to do better.
So there is no way for you to go for a long vacation because products are always developing, everything is so fast.
Mhm.
You need always to understand what's going on everywhere.
Yeah, I'll admit vacations have been a little difficult, but I do love what I do, and so I love the challenge of it all, um, but I do find those ways. It's like, and I think this is also as a design manager that you build up your team in such a way that reinforces that. So it's not just me. The expectation should not be on me as a design leader alone to connect these dots. I tell my most junior designer, like, this is a skill I want to see you evolve in your career. And like, so each of everyone in the team should act as almost like this like mesh network, who is paying attention. They should surface, hey, I just heard something about this. This sounds like something, Larry, you mentioned another product. Excellent. Let's go investigate that. And so that does allow me to take vacations. And when I have really good people who are also listening.
Yeah, I agree. 20 years in design, is it correct?
Yeah, a little more than 20, I guess about 24. And that doesn't even count just sort of being a artist, digital artist before that.
Uh, what makes you still stay in the industry? Because they say that after 7 years, people usually regret about their career choices and said, okay, maybe I should took different path. Did you ever have this kind of thought that you could also be not only designer but maybe some other career?
It's an interesting question, and to some degree, yes. And I had the opportunity, and so fortunately, in the I don't know first 2 decades of my career, I had the opportunity to work in different roles in different companies. I started off originally thinking, oh, I want to be like graphic design, maybe digital marketing, maybe lead a marketing team, and I realized that was not for me. And then I thought, hey, I want to be able to lead a cross-functional team of engineers and UX and digital marketing. And because I love solving problems and thinking, wow, if I could have all of the players, then I could really be able to think about problems in this very broader context. And then I did that for a startup. And then I realized maybe that's not for me. And then it sort of refined my focus in terms of really the UX and product design aspects of it. Um, it So having had the opportunity to try different things in my career and see my career evolve and change over time, I'd say if anything, it's like it has actually focused me in terms of doing what I love. And I think how I see my own career evolving, and it's not so much about doing something else exactly, but it is really a deeper dive into what I would describe as AI product design. Not using AI to design products. That's different. But I mean, you think about AI product design, like right now, we are really approaching it from the perspective of the last couple of decades of digital product design. We're treating it in the same way, and it's not. And I think those processes are evolving. And so I think about like what I want to be. It's like I want to be, a director or a leader of AI product design with that specific focus because it is so much more challenging than just, from my perspective now, traditional product design. And so it's not so much of me thinking about doing something else, it's thinking about heading down this path, in this refinement of like what specifically I want to focus on, as my career evolves.
Mm-hmm. We also do a lot of R&D in patterns for AI
Mm.
implementation in applications, and I think, yeah, that's a future for the next at least 5 years. So remember when material design evolved, that it didn't
Yeah.
cover majority of topics at all. If you were designing enterprise apps, business applications, there are not many guides you could go and look what kind of patterns you would look like
Hmm.
for you would use. The same you have now here. It's super interesting because you can experiment with everything. There are so many patterns not
Absolutely.
invented yet, and you can make the difference. Uh,
Absolutely.
and I believe in the future, everybody will have to shift to the role of AI designer.
When I think about designers, who I work to sort of bring a better sort of understanding, at least to where my current understanding is, which is not to say I am anyway an expert. Even my own understanding is evolving month after month. But when I try to get designers thinking about AI, it's like you have to think about it a little bit differently. You have to think about AI as another actor in a process. It's not just input output. In terms of a UI and or a system, you now have this other thing that is person-like in a way who might asking you more questions, might be requiring more input, might be having, in a sense, a conversation in a way to ultimately lead to some outcome, which is very, very different than the products we have been working with for the last 20 years. And so it does require designers to stop thinking in that traditional sense. Oh, I just need a form and a button for input, or I need and there's going to be something that comes back, and I need to make a nice display that is user friendly and people can understand it and has all it's great, no heuristic problems. But now it's like we think about the next 5 years, and the evolution of these products. I tend to feel that like 5 years from now, it's going to be very, very different. The patterns of use, the things that people were used to, are just going to change, and designers need to be ready to evolve with that.
Mhm.
Learn. And so I think right now is the time designers everywhere need to be learning about AI, not using it generatively. I mean, but understand it. Think about what is it doing within in a sense, a transactional process of a user interacting with a product.
Um, do you tell your designers that AI will take their jobs if they will not
Oh,
evolve?
definitely not. I don't believe that. Not at all. And this is the thing. It's like you see this kind of hype, and and here's the thing. I think that AI, it's like you can do some pretty amazing things from nothing to something in terms of generative. But does it necessarily solve a problem? No. But I think what AI can be and should be for product designers is an assistant of sorts. Like the way I use AI in my own process, I like to describe it as using it's sort of like this micro transactional way. Like I don't use it to generate wireframes, and there's tools for that. I'll use it in these small things to refine or to provide some ideas that I can then take, and then maybe provide some initial kind of thoughts, on those ideas. And so thinking about, using AI is like I was having a conversation with somebody, maybe a junior designer, like, here's what I'm thinking. Run with that real quick. Come back with a couple of thoughts. Great, I love this idea. Let's focus on this one. And I think that that's really like for the designers, if who can embrace that process and not be afraid of it, not going to take their jobs. I think if anything, it will allow a designer to focus on what they do best, really, and like offload some of the more time consuming aspects. Like for example, like my team and I, when we think about UX writing, like writing error messages, not the most fun thing to do. But you know what? It needs to be done well because we need to be able to communicate and make sure that our software, especially when it's complex and it's driven by Salesforce, super, super complex types of error messages that come, they need to be understood by a user. Do I need my designers to sit and like write up a nice like error message that provides a call to action that can help a user understand a very complex thing? No, we can do this with AI very simply. So I would rather them use that and then focus more on how is the best way to present this error message. Matter of fact, even better, how can I prevent error prevention, right? How can I prevent this error from even coming up? So I would rather designers focus on that problem solving, prevent the error, not the time of writing the error
Mm-hmm.
message, right? And so I think that if designers, if they start thinking that way, and they start utilizing these technologies and embracing it, they'll understand that it can have a tremendous benefit, to themselves and their own design work.
Yeah, what I remember from my early career is that we had a lot of discussions with developers because I wanted to handle every possible error with very nice message that will help click one button and solve the problem. But at the end, the estimate for this kind of
Mm-hmm.
change was bigger than the development of all the systems. So sometimes handling all the cases when something can go wrong, it can take as much time as development of the system. So I totally agree. We need to have more time to focus on this kind of cases
Mm-hmm.
because usually for many projects, this is okay. User somehow will handle that. This is we need more new features and about errors some that will somehow
Absolutely.
be there. Yeah, and I also have thoughts about why we love brainstorming with AI. Because about ethics, it never says the idea is stupid. You know that even like in our workshops, when people have to do the quiet brainstorming and sharing the ideas, they're still even with without words, you can see in the eyes of other people they didn't like your idea, and it somehow can discourage. But in when you're brainstorming with AI, it always likes all of your ideas and tries to even explore deeper, even with the stupidest ideas you may have. So
Mm-hmm.
it opens to it helps you to open the to creativity to the flow. Then you can brainstorm for half an hour without, and you're super happy because it encourages you to brainstorm more. And also, I
Yes.
remember there were frequent requests on social media and Facebook when people asked, do you know some people from other industries than ours? You would like to invite them to our hackathon or our workshops because we need to get other ideas from our bubble. And AI can be super helpful with that because I can be good in design, but maybe I'm not so good in marketing. But everything we do is intersection of different disciplines, and that really helps. It's like you're inviting for brainstorming not only the person who knows what you know, but the person who is junior in all other disciplines, but maybe even not junior, sometimes a middle level, and it helps.
Absolutely. And it's a great way to think about it. And I often think about like when there's those times like when the team is just completely overloaded, there's just not the time for us to get together and think through problems. And I always encourage that. It's like, hey, create a prompt, run your idea, at least get it, run it through a prompt and see like what the feedback is. Or if you have a design, you're getting kind of stuck, ask ChatGPT to do heuristic analysis, on your design. I've done that before because it's like, you look at something, especially when it's a product that it's ongoing, it's evolving over time. You can get sort of tunnel vision, right? And it's like, and I want an honest thing. Okay, what is wrong with this? Like, I have done this before. I'll use an image of a design and I'll ask. So I have a custom GPT I kind of refined more for product design. I'll say, what is wrong with this design? It's great. I love saying, providing in a sense the leading prompt that there is something wrong because then it's like it becomes then not this, oh, everything is great. This successfully addresses this point or addresses this point. It actively tries to find things wrong with it. And I think that can be very good, for a designer.
Yeah, it also it helps when you tell him what you actually want from the
Hmm.
feedback, like make it more actionable or make it more suggestions more result oriented, because how can we
Absolutely.
help to solve these types of problems? And really helps. Do you know the rubber duck method? Developers are using that, and we also use it in our agency. Uh, our design director, Helena, used to gift the small ducks to her teammates. Just saying, before you present your designs to others, present designs to this duck. You can do it not in loud, just in your thoughts. But the idea is that after you finish designing something, you have to tell about that to somebody and then get the feedback. And usually, if you do it even to the toy, your mind will be in the mode that you will say, okay, this is not the best idea. I think I can find another idea. Or,
Yeah.
yeah, we need to somehow describe what we are going to achieve about our problem. Even this kind of thought process helps. And if you have to discuss that with AI, it also helps because you need to communicate clearly the requirements, what are the goals, what you actually need. And if you have this custom GPTs that will force you to refine your question, what you actually want to achieve with this
Yeah.
kind of design, it will help. But I
Absolutely.
agree that for now everybody thinks about AI like a chat interface, like
Mm.
mostly yes, maybe it can generate some charts, but it's only input field and you get display of the information in text and graphics. But there is a huge opportunity with lots of different interactions when interfaces will be generated ad hoc, super personalized to what we actually need in every specific use case.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think like the chat focused interface tends to be sort of a catch-all. It's like everyone is like, hey, let's add a chat window, and then we've added AI.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a certain degree of cognitive load to that. It's like when a user is presented with a field that says sort of like, ask me anything. Like, can you give me an example? Like, what can I ask? And then it's maybe people become more comfortable with it, and then they find their own ways of interacting with it. And so maybe that's too broad, And to your point, I think there are no doubt better ways in which we might find within the interface something personalized to the user, something that asks questions that guides people. And so that maybe the answers are in sort of a natural language response, but they don't have to think about what should I ask first because the system has already asked me what it wants to know. I answer it. Maybe I'm not clear enough in my answer, so it asks me some follow-up questions to ultimately refine whatever the output is or the experience is. So we can think about natural language processing within this, but not necessarily just a chat window, right? It's like, I mean, then we start bringing these things together. Like, for example, it asks you a question, you answer, and sort of after this interaction, it starts building something based on what you're conversing about, or it asks you, or you ask something, and it presents the information you need, or constructs something, a display that answers your question visually. I think there's some really interesting possibilities, especially with complex software for this. And then I think over this next couple of years, I think it's going to be really, really interesting. As all these interaction patterns come together.
What do you think would be the most important skills for designers other than we already expect from them?
I would say there's a couple of different ways I would answer that. So one we've kind of already touched on, the knowledge around AI, the understanding how AI works and its benefits to you and your process, and to the world as a whole. But the other side of that are really the soft skills. People talk about the soft skills a lot, but I find that truly successful designers are able to communicate well. They're able to tell stories. So even in my own mentorship practice, I have worked with several who around their storytelling capability, like to be able to, because if you can have the most brilliant idea, but if you cannot communicate it succinctly, you know, evoking emotion, excitement, then your beautiful, perfect idea could get lost on everyone.
Mhm.
And being able to push, like, I think this is a hard one for people. People don't like conflict, and like you might be a designer in a room full of engineers who are all saying, no, no, we're not going to do that. That's too difficult. We can do it simply if we just did it this way. But your answer is solid because you validated it with users. You have the support. As a designer, you need to be able to push. You need to be able to hold your ground. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to win. I have sat in a room of C-level executives and have those times where I have pivoted the conversation based on the data that I provided. And other times I've been told, that's great, Larry, but no, it happens. But the thing is that willingness and the ability and the drive to do that. I think that is incredibly critical skill for all designers of all levels. It doesn't matter if you're a manager or a leader, lead UX designer. You can be a product designer one, associate product designer. You need to be able to communicate, tell the story, support it, and hold your ground if you think you're right. That doesn't mean like in an egotistical way, right? I mean, support it. Don't just give in because you have somebody pushing against you.
And you need to also know how to build alliances because as a designer, you are responsible not only for your role, but for building the culture that all developers understand
Mhm.
the value and they are on your side. Maybe quality assurance engineers could be on your side too. Because if you are in your silo, you just come to the meetings once a week and try to push decisions on people who are having lunches every day together, it would be harder.
Absolutely. And I think that's even more critical. And when you have organizations of low UX maturity, when you already have this natural, like you are a UX designer. What I don't know what that is. That like I said before, does that mean you're a graphic designer? It's like when you have those kinds of challenges, it's even more important to individually meet with key engineers that you work with or product managers or even people not within the product teams because when you think about the stakeholders who are interacting with product teams who have like an idea, something they want to convey. If you get and you build a relationship with them and they start to understand, I did this in a past role in a lower UX maturity organization. I mean, there were VP levels that I was getting to know because I wanted them to understand the value of what me and my team brought to the product. And it got to the point where they were like, they maybe didn't necessarily fully get it, but they couldn't deny the outcome. Like when we were involved, how something ended up so much better, and they would see this over time, and so then they would push like, well, we would definitely need Larry and his team on this.
How do you think will evolve collaboration between developers and designers? Because there are a lot of videos on YouTube now saying that in a few years there will be no development jobs because everything will be described by natural language. You will just write requirements. If you've seen the announcements from GitHub Copilot, they expect maybe in a year that all the software could be written just by natural language.
Mm.
But in comments, developers will say, yeah, but they will still need somebody to write requirements to tell system what it has to be looking like, how it has to work. So developers will still have work. But there are some other comments saying, hey, product managers are writing requirements. Why would they need developers? And then somebody writes, hey, designers know what we have to build. They can also write requirements. So why do we need developers at the end?
I tend to think that it sounds really scary and it sounds like, oh, this is the way it's going. But I think back to an earlier point, I think that these technologies, it's we do not have AI, we do not have artificial true intelligence yet, human level intelligence. And maybe that's decades off, maybe not, who knows. But thing is that the human being has those unique abilities to be able to connect the dots in ways, intuition. Machines cannot have intuition. And so we can think about these tools as assistants. It's like no doubt engineers have the same kind of mundane kind of engineering tasks. Like we have mundane design tasks. Like if we need to, like we've come up with this design, like, oh god, we need to like now have a bunch of different variants to reflect different error states and different, hover states and press states and focus states and accessibility and all this. I would love to be able to say, hey, my team and I, we came up with this design. Now go generate the variants based on I need these criteria. That's a mundane task. It doesn't require so much in terms of our thought process. And I feel like with engineers, there's the same to some degree. I feel like there are no doubt aspects of the code, refactoring code, improving, finding inefficiencies, finding other ways to correct legacy code challenges. So this is the thing. It's like, sure, you can generate code in a 0 to 1 capacity, and maybe it's great. I tell you where it doesn't work is long-lived enterprise products that have existed for 20 years, where you've got code, there might be still code left from 20 years ago, and you put something in that might be beautifully written and whatnot, but doesn't account for a lot of the hacky, sometimes workaround things. And going back and refactoring that code and correcting and eliminating that technical debt requires thought. It requires strategy. It requires thinking about things. You can't just rip it out and replace it because what it might break. And that's I feel like is a difference. And so you end up on this ideal of like, oh, it's going to create all this stuff for you, but maybe something small, maybe that's okay. But I personally wouldn't not rely on any number of I've seen products that can generate some UI based on a prompt. Well, that too sounds really great. Maybe it's fine for like just generating some ideas, but will it automatically know what our design system is? Will it automatically understand the inconsistencies we already have within our platform? Will it understand that we have a strategy to address those inconsistencies and address these types of implementation of our design system over time? Because it's a complex environment. You can't do it all at once. Will it understand that? Of course not. So it's maybe one day the software will get to that point from an engineering or product perspective or design perspective, but I don't believe that is soon. I think, and there will be, even as these technologies evolve, we have to think about the human component of it.
Okay, thank you, Larry. We are almost out of time. Maybe some other comments, anything else you would like to tell to our audience?
I think one of the biggest things I think I would leave everybody with, it's like kind of touching on a couple of points, the growth of yourself as a product designer. I think embracing AI, not being afraid of it, learning how it can augment your process. I think every single designer at this point should be really thinking about that, not in a I'm a scared kind of way, but thinking about how can you become even better embracing these technologies. And the other aspect is really thinking deeper, about designing for AI products, recognizing that you need to shift your mindset a little. You need to think about how AI is interacting with you as a user or with users, and be ready to sort of let your own sort of mind change and evolve in terms of your design process, your processes, the kinds of questions you ask, the way you approach things. And the last point I definitely want to kind of double click on is the soft skills. It is incredibly important for all designers to be able to support, validate their work, and be able to stand up for it. Because you might be right, and even in a room full of people that think you're wrong, but if you can support it, you need to make it heard and tell the story in a way that people understand and get excited behind it.
Thanks, Larry. I think we
Thank you.
sparked some ideas in many designers and design managers. So guys, do you agree with everything we discussed? Do you think designers will have to change, or do you think that everything will stay the same? Please leave your comments, please subscribe. We are going to have lots of other conversations on the topic, so stay tuned. Thank you, Larry.